Dr. Lisa Martinez stared at the screen in her small laboratory aboard the exploration vessel, Aurora's Edge. The blue glow from the display lit up her tired face as she read the alien message for the 100th time. 3 weeks had passed since they first received the transmission from deep space, and she still could not believe what she was seeing. The message came from something called the Zephyrian Empire. Lisa had spent years studying languages from Earth, but this was different. This was the first real communication from an alien civilization, and it was her job to figure out what they were saying. Her translation computer worked day and night to decode the strange symbols and sounds. The AI system was good, but it was built for human languages. Alien words were much harder to understand. Still, the basic meaning was clear enough to make everyone on the ship very excited. The Zephyrians wanted to meet humans. They had sent an invitation to Earth, asking humanity to join their galactic community. The message spoke of an ancient ritual called the Bonding of Minds, that all new species had to complete before they could become part of the Empire. Lisa printed out the latest translation and walked through the narrow corridors of the ship. The Aurora's Edge was not a big vessel, but it was home to 50 of Earth's best scientists and diplomats. She found Captain Jake Morrison in the main meeting room, looking at star charts with his officers. "Captain, I have the updated translation," Lisa said, holding up the papers. Jake looked up from his charts. He was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes. "What does it say this time, Doc?" Lisa sat down at the table and spread out the papers. The Zephyrians describe the ritual as a sacred ceremony. They say it is where the newest species shows their worth through mental communion with the Empire's eldest member species. Commander Alex Thompson, who was sitting across from Jake, leaned forward. "Mental communion? What does that mean exactly?" "The translation is not perfect," Lisa admitted, "but it seems to be some kind of sharing of thoughts or ideas. Maybe like meditation or storytelling. The Zephyrians want to see how we think and what makes us special as a species." Jake nodded slowly. "It sounds peaceful enough. What else do they say?" Lisa flipped through the pages. "They praise our fierce spirit and warrior's heart. They seem very impressed with humanity for some reason. They call us brave explorers who conquered the void beasts." "Void beasts?" Alex asked with a confused look. "I think they mean the challenges of space travel," Lisa explained. Radiation, meteor storms, the dangers of deep space. They probably see our space program as very brave." Jake stood up and walked to the window that looked out into the star field. "Ambassador Brooks needs to see this." "When is she expected back from the communications room?" "She should be here soon," Alex said. She was talking to Earth about the mission approval. As if summoned by their conversation, Ambassador Helen Brooks entered the meeting room. She was a smart woman in her 50s who had spent most of her life in diplomatic service. Her face showed the stress of the past few weeks, but her eyes were bright with excitement. "Good news from Earth," Helen announced. "The United Nations has approved the mission. We are officially humanity's first diplomatic contact team." Jake smiled. "Dr. Martinez has the latest translation of their invitation." Helen sat down and read through Lisa's papers carefully. "This is fascinating. They want us to participate in some kind of mental sharing ritual. It sounds like a cultural exchange." "That's what we think too," Lisa said, "though some parts of the translation are still unclear. The Zephyrian language is very complex. Their words seem to have multiple meanings depending on context." "What kind of multiple meanings?" Helen asked. Lisa pulled out her notes. "For example, when they talk about our fierce spirit, the word they use could mean brave, strong, or even aggressive. When they mention warrior's heart, it might mean courageous, determined, or actually related to fighting." Alex frowned. "You think they see us as warriors?" "I don't know," Lisa said honestly. "The translation AI is doing its best, but we are working with limited data. Human languages are very different from whatever the Zephyrians speak." Helen looked thoughtful. "Well, humans have always been explorers and survivors. Maybe they admire our ability to overcome challenges. The important thing is that they want to welcome us peacefully." "The ceremony sounds simple enough," Jake added. We show up, share some thoughts or stories about humanity, and they accept us into their community. What could go wrong? Lisa felt a small worry in the back of her mind, but she pushed it away. The translation was not perfect, but the general meaning seemed clear. The Zephyrians were offering friendship and membership in a galactic civilization. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. How long until we reached their space? Helen asked. 2 weeks, Jake replied. We will arrive at their capital world, Kethmore, right on schedule. Over the next few days, Lisa continued working on the translation. She found more references to human victories and conquests, but she assumed these were poetic ways of describing humanity's achievements in science and exploration. The Zephyrians seemed to use very dramatic language for everything, the deeper. She dug into their messages, the more she found praise for humanity's strength and combat skills. But this had to be metaphorical, she thought. They were probably talking about humanity's ability to fight against disease, poverty, and the challenges of building a civilization. One evening, as she worked late in her lab, Lisa found a particularly confusing passage. The Zephyrians wrote about the great arena of testing where the ritual would take place. Arena seemed like an odd word choice for a peaceful ceremony, but maybe it was just another translation error. She made a note to double-check that section later. For now, she was satisfied that the basic message was clear. The Zephyrians wanted to welcome humanity through an ancient ritual. That would prove humans worthy of joining their galactic community. As the Aurora's Edge continued its journey through space, Lisa felt both excitement and nervousness. She was about to help humanity take its first steps into a larger universe. The translation might not be perfect, but the opportunity was real. What she did not know was that every word she had translated was leading them toward a terrible misunderstanding that would change everything. The first thing Commander Alex Thompson noticed when they arrived at Kethmore was the size of the welcoming fleet. Dozens of alien ships surrounded the Aurora's Edge, each one massive and covered in strange symbols that seemed to glow with their own light. The Zephyrian vessels looked nothing like human ships, with curved hulls and wing-like extensions that made them appear almost alive. They certainly know how to make an impression, Captain Jake Morrison said as he watched the alien fleet through. The bridge windows. Dr. Lisa Martinez stood beside him, her translation device in hand. She had been working non-stop during their final approach, trying to improve their communication systems. The Zephyrians had been sending constant messages of welcome, and each one seemed more enthusiastic than the last. Captain, we are receiving a priority transmission from the lead Zephyrian vessel, reported Lieutenant Danny Clark from the communications station. Put it through, Jake ordered. The alien voice that filled the bridge was unlike anything they had ever heard. It sounded like multiple voices speaking at once, with tones that seemed to vibrate through the ship's hull. Lisa's translation device worked quickly to convert the sounds into words they could understand. Welcome, honored warriors of the third planet. Your arrival brings great joy to the Empire. We have prepared the sacred arena for your glorious trial. Ambassador Helen Brooks looked confused. Trial? I thought this was supposed to be a peaceful ceremony. Lisa checked her translation device. The word could also mean test or demonstration. Maybe they want us to show them something about human culture. Another message came through the speakers. The legends of your great victories have spread throughout the Empire. Your conquest of the void beasts and your battles against the metal demons have earned you much respect, Alex frowned. Metal demons? What are they talking about? I'm not sure, Lisa admitted. The translation is still not perfect. Maybe they mean our robots or computer systems. The Zephyrian fleet began to move, guiding the Aurora's Edge toward the planet below. Kethmore was a beautiful world with purple oceans and silver clouds, but what caught their attention were the massive structures on the surface. Cities stretched across entire continents, connected by bridges that seemed to float in the air. Look at those buildings, Jake said in amazement. They must be thousands of years old. The Zephyrians directed them to land at what appeared to be a spaceport, though it was unlike any human design. The landing platform was carved from a single piece of black stone, covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change as they watched. As soon as the Aurora's edge touched down, a group of aliens approached their ship. The humans got their first close look at their host through the external cameras. The Zephyrians were tall and thin, with skin that looked like polished metal. They had 4 arms and heads that were longer than human heads, with large eyes that glowed with soft light. They looked peaceful enough, Helen observed. The welcoming committee waited patiently as the human delegation prepared to leave their ship. Jake had chosen a small team for the first meeting. Himself, Helen, Alex, Lisa, and Danny. They wore their best diplomatic uniforms and carried translation devices to help with communication. The moment they stepped outside, something strange happened. The Zephyrians immediately dropped to one knee, a gesture that seemed to show great respect. The lead alien, who was taller than the others and wore elaborate robes, spoke in their musical language. "Rise, legendary warriors. The Empire has waited long for your arrival. Your reputation precedes you across the star systems." Helen looked uncomfortable with the excessive praise. "Please, we are simply diplomats and scientists. We come in peace to learn about your culture." The lead Zephyrian, who introduced himself as High Commander Vexthal, seemed confused by her words. "Modest warriors are the most dangerous. Your humility only proves your strength." Lisa worked frantically with her translation device, trying to understand why the aliens kept calling them warriors. The Zephyrians led them through the spaceport, past crowds of curious aliens who watched them with what seemed like awe and fear. "They are staring at us like we are famous," Danny whispered to Alex. "Or dangerous," Alex replied quietly. The architecture of the alien city was breathtaking. Every building seemed to be both functional and artistic, with flowing lines and surfaces that changed color as they moved. The Zephyrians explained that their civilization was thousands of years old, built by 12 different species working together. Each species brings their own skills to the Empire, Vexthal explained as they walked. The Mortek provide strength, the Velthari offer speed, the Kethron supply defense. What gifts do the humans bring? Jake thought for a moment. We are explorers and inventors. We solve problems and adapt to new situations. Vexthal nodded approvingly. Cunning and flexibility. The marks of a true warrior species. Lisa noticed that no matter what they said, the Zephyrians interpreted everything in military terms. When Helen mentioned human art and music, they assumed she was talking about war songs and battle paintings. When Danny described human technology, they thought he was describing weapons. The group was taken to a large building that Vexthal called the Hall of Preparation. Inside, they found rooms filled with equipment that looked like armor and weapons, though the designs were completely alien. "Here you will prepare for the bonding of minds," Vexthal explained. "Choose whatever equipment feels right to you. The arena has been prepared according to ancient traditions." Helen looked alarmed. "Arena? We thought this was going to be a meditation or discussion." "The arena is where all species prove their worth," Vexthal replied. "It is the sacred space where mind bonds with mind through the test of combat." Alex stepped forward. "Combat? There must be some mistake. We are diplomats, not soldiers." The Zephyrians exchanged looks of confusion. Vexthal spoke with his companions in their own language for several minutes before turning back to the humans. "Perhaps your translation devices are malfunctioning," he said kindly. "All species must complete the combat trial to join the Empire. It is the only way to prove that your minds are worthy of the bonding." Lisa felt a cold fear growing in her stomach. She looked at her translation device and began running new analysis programs. Something was very wrong with their understanding of the situation. "How long do we have to prepare?" Jake asked, trying to stay calm. "The ceremony begins at dawn," Vexthal replied. "The Empire's greatest champions await you in the arena. It will be a glorious battle." As the Zephyrians left them alone to prepare, the human team gathered in a circle. Lisa worked desperately on her translation device while the others tried to understand what was happening. "I think we may have made a serious mistake," Lisa said quietly. The Zephyrians seem to think we are some kind of warrior species. But how? Helen asked. We made it clear that we come in peace. I'm starting to think our translations were wrong from the beginning, Lisa replied. We may have completely misunderstood what they want from us. Outside their window, they could see the arena in the distance. It was a massive structure that looked more like a coliseum than a temple. The reality of their situation was becoming clear, and it was nothing like what they had expected. Dr. Lisa Martinez had not slept all night. She sat in the corner of their preparation room, surrounded by alien equipment she did not understand, working frantically on her translation device. A small screen glowed in the darkness as she ran. Analysis after analysis, trying to understand where everything had gone wrong. Lisa, you need to rest, Ambassador Helen Brooks said softly, but Lisa shook her head. I'm close to something, Lisa whispered. The Zephyrian language is much more complex than we thought. Every word has layers of meaning that change based on who is speaking and who is listening. Captain Jake Morrison paced near the window, looking out at the arena that dominated the skyline. Even in the dim pre-dawn light, he could see movement inside the massive structure. What kind of creatures are we supposed to fight? Commander Alex Thompson was examining the alien weapons that had been provided for them. They were unlike anything from Earth, with curved blades and energy projectors that hummed with power. These are definitely not ceremonial. They're designed to kill. Lieutenant Danny Clark sat with his back against the wall, his head in his hands. How did we get this so wrong? We're scientists and diplomats, not gladiators. Lisa looked up from her device, her eyes wide with sudden understanding. I found it. I found the root of our translation error. Everyone gathered around her as she pointed to symbols on her screen. The Zephyrian word we translated as peaceful communion actually means combat trial, the word for mental bonding. Translates more accurately as proving worthiness through battle. Helen sat down heavily. So this whole time they've been inviting us to fight for our lives? It's worse than that, Lisa continued, her voice shaking. I've been analyzing their historical records. The Zephyrian Empire isn't a peaceful alliance. It's a military hierarchy where species are ranked by their fighting ability. They conquer worlds and force the survivors to prove their worth in combat. Jake stopped pacing. And they think we're what, exactly? Lisa pulled up more data on her screen. They've been monitoring our radio and television signals for decades. They've seen our movies, our news reports about wars, our video games. They think Earth is a planet of warriors who fight for entertainment, Alex laughed bitterly. They think our fiction is real? To them, it is real, Lisa explained. Their own culture is built around constant warfare. They can't understand a species that makes movies about fighting without actually being fighters. They see our entertainment as training videos. Danny looked up. What about the void beasts and metal demons they keep mentioning? Lisa checked her notes. Void beasts are what they call the dangers of space travel, but they think we defeated them through superior combat skills, not technology. The metal demons are our robots and computers. They believe we conquered artificial intelligence through warfare. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. They were trapped on an alien world, expected to fight creatures that had defeated dozens of other species, all because of a massive misunderstanding about human nature. Can we explain the mistake? Helen asked hopefully. I tried, Lisa said. But their language doesn't have concepts for our kind of peaceful exploration. When I try to explain that we're not warriors, they think I'm being modest or using psychological warfare. Jake walked to the window again. The arena was fully lit now, and he could see crowds of aliens gathering in the stands. How many species have they tested this way? According to their records, 47 different species have attempted the bonding of minds, Lisa replied. Only 12 have survived to join the Empire. What happened to the others? Alex asked quietly. Lisa didn't answer. But her expression told them everything they needed to know. A sound from outside made them all freeze. The door to their room opened, and High Commander Vexthal entered with several other Zephyrians. Their metal skin reflected the morning light streaming through the windows. The time has come, honored warriors, Vexthal announced. The arena awaits your glorious trial. Helen stepped forward, trying one last time to explain. High Commander, there has been a misunderstanding. We are not warriors. We are peaceful explorers who wish to learn about your culture. Vexthal's large eyes glowed brighter. Your psychological tactics are impressive but unnecessary. The Empire has studied your species for many cycles. We know of your great battles against the Void Beasts. We have seen your conquest of the Metal Demons. Your warrior culture is legendary, but those aren't real, Danny protested. They're just stories, entertainment. Stories of battle are how warriors pass down their traditions, Vexthal replied. Your species creates more war stories than any other we have encountered. Clearly, combat is central to your culture. Lisa tried to use her translation device to explain, but every word she spoke seemed to make the aliens more convinced that humans were a warrior species. Their language had no way to express the concept of fictional violence or entertainment that didn't involve actual combat. The arena contains 3 trials, Vexthal continued. First, you will face the Mortek champion, whose acidic breath has melted the armor of countless warriors. Second, the Velthari phase shifter, who can become invisible and strike from any direction. Finally, if you survive, you will face the Kethron guardian, whose armored shell has never been penetrated. Jake felt his stomach drop. And if we refuse to fight? Refusal means your species is not worthy of joining the Empire, Vexthal explained. Your world will be marked as a target for future conquest. It is better to die with honor in the arena than to live as slaves. The Zephyrians began to escort them from the room. As they walked through the corridors toward the arena, Lisa continued working on her translation device, hoping to find some way to communicate the truth. There has to be something we can do, Alex whispered. Jake looked at his team, these brilliant scientists and diplomats who had volunteered for humanity's first contact mission. They were about to face creatures that had killed representatives from dozens of other species, all because their movies and video games had convinced aliens that humans were born fighters. We adapt, Jake said quietly. It's what humans do best. We figure out solutions to impossible problems. As they approached the arena entrance, they could hear the roar of the crowd inside. Thousands of aliens had gathered to watch what they believed would be a legendary battle between Earth's greatest warriors and the Empire's most deadly champions. Lisa made one final breakthrough with her translation device. Jake, I found something. The ritual isn't just about fighting. It's about proving that a species can think beyond their own nature. The Zephyrians have been looking for someone who can change their empire. What do you mean? Helen asked. They're trapped in their own warrior culture, Lisa explained quickly as they reached the arena doors. They want to find a species that can show them a different way. The massive doors began to open, revealing the arena beyond. The crowd's roar grew louder as they saw the human delegation. Then we don't fight like warriors, Jake said with sudden determination. We show them what humans really are. The arena was bigger than anything the humans had ever seen. Rows of seats stretched up into the darkness, filled with thousands of aliens from different species. The floor was covered in sand that looked red under the bright lights, and Captain Jake Morrison realized with a sick feeling that the color probably came from the blood of previous challengers. Stay together, Jake whispered to his team as they walked into the center of the arena. Remember, we're not trying to be warriors, we're trying to show them who we really are. Dr. Lisa Martinez clutched her translation device, still hoping to find a way to communicate with the Zephyrians. Ambassador Helen Brooks walked beside her, trying to look calm despite the fear in her eyes. Commander Alex Thompson and Lieutenant Danny Clark stayed close, examining the arena for anything that might help them survive. High Commander Vexthal stood in a special box above the arena, his metallic skin gleaming in the lights. His voice boomed through speakers as he addressed the crowd. Today we witness the trial of the legendary human warriors. Let us see if their reputation is earned. A gate on the far side of the arena began to open. The crowd fell silent as heavy footsteps echoed from the darkness beyond. What emerged made the humans step back in shock. The Mordic champion was massive, at least 12 feet tall, with thick gray skin that looked like armor. Its mouth was filled with rows of sharp teeth, and steam rose from its nostrils. When it breathed, the air shimmered with heat and the smell of acid. "First trial," Vexthal announced. "Defeat the Mordic champion or become its meal." The creature charged toward them with surprising speed. Jake pushed his team apart as the Mordic breathed a stream of acid that melted the sand where they had been standing. "Danny, what can you tell me about this thing?" Jake shouted as they dodged another acid blast. Danny pulled out his scanner and pointed it at the creature. "It's like a living chemical factory. The acid comes from glands in its throat, but it needs time to recharge between attacks." "How much time?" Alex asked, rolling away from the creature's massive claws. "About 15 seconds, Danny replied, checking his readings. Lisa had an idea. "Jake, what if we don't fight it? What if we solve the problem instead?" "What do you mean?" Helen asked, staying behind Jake as the Mordic stalked them around the arena. "Look at the creature," Lisa said, pointing at the Mordic. "It's not evil, it's just following its nature. The Zephyrians have trained it to attack strangers." Jake understood immediately. Instead of running away from the Mortek, he stopped and held up his hands. "Everyone stay calm. Don't act like threats." The Mortek paused, confused by their behavior. It had fought many species before, but they had all tried to attack it or run away. These humans were doing neither. Jake slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out a protein bar from their ship's supplies. He unwrapped it carefully and placed it on the ground, then backed away. The Mordic approached the food cautiously. It sniffed the protein bar, then ate it quickly. The creature looked at Jake with what might have been gratitude. "It's just hungry," Danny realized. "They've been starving it to make it more aggressive." The crowd in the arena began to murmur in confusion. No species had ever tried to feed the Mordic champion instead of fighting it. Jake pulled out another protein bar and offered it to the creature. This time, the Mortek approached him directly, taking the food from his hand with surprising gentleness. "The humans show mercy to their enemy," Vexthal announced, his voice filled with wonder. "This is a tactic we have not seen before." The second gate opened, and the Velthari phase shifter emerged. It was a sleek, cat-like creature that seemed to flicker in and out of visibility. The crowd watched in anticipation as it circled the humans, occasionally disappearing completely before reappearing somewhere else. "This one hunts by stealth," Alex observed. "It uses fear and confusion to weaken its prey." Lisa was studying the creature's movement patterns on her scanner. "It's not actually invisible. It's bending light around itself, but there's still a heat signature. Can we track it?" Jake asked. "Yes, but that's not the point," Lisa replied. "Look at its behavior. It's scared. It keeps running away because it doesn't understand why we're not fighting." Helen stepped forward slowly, ignoring the gasps from the crowd. "What if we show it that we're not a threat?" She sat down on the sand and began to hum softly, a lullaby she remembered from her childhood. The Velthari stopped circling and became visible, its large eyes focused on her. "Music," Danny whispered. "It's responding to the music." The creature approached Helen cautiously, drawn by the gentle sound. When it was close enough, Helen slowly extended her hand. The Velthari sniffed her fingers, then rubbed against her palm like a house cat. "Incredible," Vexthal said from his box. "The humans have tamed the phase shifter without violence." The final gate opened with a grinding sound that echoed through the arena. The Kethran Guardian that emerged was the most frightening creature they had faced. It was covered in thick metallic armor that seemed to be part of its body. Its eyes glowed red, and each step made the ground shake. "This is the Empire's ultimate champion," Vexthal announced. "No weapon has ever penetrated its shell." The Kethran charged at the humans with devastating force. Jake and his team scattered. But this creature was different from the others. It showed no curiosity about their peaceful behavior, only a drive to destroy. "This one's different," Alex shouted. "It's not just following instincts, it's been programmed to kill." Lisa scanned the creature with her device. It's not entirely biological. There are mechanical parts controlling its brain. They've turned it into a weapon, Danny realized with horror. Jake made a decision that would change everything. Instead of trying to tame the Kethron like the others, he approached it directly. We're not going to fight you, he said, even though he knew the creature couldn't understand him. We're going to help you. The Kethron swung its massive arm at Jake, but he dodged and ran toward the creature instead of away from it. Using his momentum, he jumped onto its back and began examining the mechanical devices attached to its head. Danny, I need you up here. Jake called out. Danny climbed onto the creature's back while Alex and Helen distracted it from the front. Working together, they began to disconnect the control devices that were forcing the Kethron to fight. These are pain stimulators, Danny said as he removed the first device. They've been torturing it to make it aggressive. As they removed each device, the Kethron's movements became less violent. When the last control was disconnected, the creature stopped fighting completely. It looked around the arena with confusion, as if seeing it clearly for the first time. The crowd was completely silent. In all the history of the Empire, no one had ever tried to free the champions instead of defeating them. Jake climbed down from the creature's back and faced Vexthal's box. This is who we are. We don't conquer through violence. We solve problems. We help others, we find better ways. The arena erupted in voices as aliens throughout the crowd began to discuss what they had witnessed. The humans had completed the trial, but not in any way the Empire had expected. The silence in the arena stretched for what felt like hours. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the center of the sandy floor, surrounded by the three creatures that were supposed to have killed him and his team. The Mortak sat peacefully nearby, no longer hungry or aggressive. The Velthari curled up next to Ambassador Helen Brooks like a giant cat. The Kethron Guardian stood quietly. Finally, free from the pain devices that had controlled it for so long, High Commander Vexthal stared down at the humans with his glowing eyes. His metallic face showed emotions that Dr. Lisa Martinez could not read, but she could tell that something fundamental had changed in the alien leader's thinking. In 10,000 years of Empire history, Vexthal said slowly, his voice echoing through the arena speakers, no species has ever completed the bonding of minds in this way. The crowd of aliens began to murmur among themselves. Lisa could hear dozens of different languages, mixing together as representatives from all 12 Empire species discussed what they had witnessed. You did not defeat our champions, Vexthal continued. You freed them. You showed mercy to creatures that were sent to kill you. This is not the way of warriors. Jake looked up at the command box. No, it's not. It's the way of humans. Commander Alex Thompson stepped forward. We told you from the beginning that we were not warriors. We are explorers, scientists, and diplomats. We solve problems. We don't create them. But your entertainment. Transmissions, Vexthal said, confusion clear in his voice. Your species creates endless stories of battle and conquest. Lisa activated her translation device and projected a hologram into the air above them. The device had finally learned enough of the Zephyrian language to show clear images and concepts. Those are stories, she explained. Fiction, entertainment. We create them because most humans will never experience real combat. We use imagination to explore ideas safely. The hologram showed scenes from human movies, but now with proper context. The aliens could see that these were actors, not real soldiers. They could understand that the violence was pretend, created for entertainment rather than training. You mean, Vexthal said slowly, that your species fights imaginary battles for pleasure? Exactly, Helen said. We prefer imaginary battles to real ones. Real violence should only be used when there is no other choice. Lieutenant Danny Clark pulled out his scanner and displayed readings from the three creatures around them. Look at these readings. The Mortak was starving. The Velthari was terrified. The Kethron was in constant pain. They didn't want to fight any more than we did. The arena crowd was growing louder as the implications of what they were seeing spread through the different species. Many of them had lost representatives in this very arena, watching their people die fighting creatures that were only aggressive because they were suffering. Vexthel climbed down from his command box and walked onto the arena floor. Up close, he was even more impressive, nearly 8 feet tall with 4 arms that moved independently. But his glowing eyes showed something the humans had not expected: shame. "We have been wrong," he said quietly. "For thousands of years, we have used pain and fear to create our trials. We believed that only through combat could we measure the worth of a species." "Why?" Jake asked. "What made you think that?" Vexthel gestured to the crowd around them. "Because that is how we grew. Up, every species in the Empire evolved through constant warfare. We fought to survive on our homeworlds. We fought each other for resources. We fought the dangers of space. Combat was the only thing we all understood." Lisa began to understand the deeper truth. "You never learned any other way to solve problems. Until today," Vexthel replied. "You have shown us something we thought was impossible. A species that became advanced without being consumed by violence." Alex looked at the creatures around them. "What will happen to them now?" "They will be cared for properly," Vexthel promised. "No more pain devices, no more starvation. They will live as they were meant to live." The crowd in the arena began to cheer, but it was different from the bloodthirsty roar they had expected earlier. This was the sound of hope, of species seeing a new possibility for their empire. "High Commander," Helen said formally, "humanity would be honored to join your empire, but not as warriors. We want to be teachers and partners. We want to help. You find better ways to solve problems." Vexthel nodded slowly. "The Empire has been searching for a species that could break us free from our cycle of violence. We have tested 47 different species, hoping to find one that could show us a different path." "And instead you found us," Jake said with a smile. "A species that fights imaginary battles so they do not have to fight real ones," Vexthel sighed, wonder in his voice. "A species that saves their enemies instead of destroying them." Over the following days, the humans worked with Vexthel and the other Empire leaders to begin transforming their civilization. Lisa's translation work became the foundation for better communication between species. Helen helped establish new diplomatic protocols that did not involve combat trials. Alex and Danny worked with alien engineers to develop technologies for exploration and discovery rather than warfare. The bonding of minds ritual was changed completely. Instead of forcing species to fight for their lives, new members of the Empire would demonstrate their unique abilities and perspectives. The arena became a place of learning and cultural exchange rather than violence. Jake found himself appointed as humanity's first ambassador to the Empire, working directly with Vexthel to establish peaceful contact with other species throughout the galaxy. The translation error that had nearly led to disaster became the foundation for the greatest alliance in galactic history. "You know," Lisa said one evening as they watched the sunset from their new quarters on Kethmar, "if our translation had been perfect from the beginning, none of this would have happened." "How do you mean?" Helen asked. "If we had understood what they really wanted, we probably would have refused to come. We would have been too scared to face their combat trials." Alex laughed. "So our mistake saved us." "More than that," Jake added. "Our mistake saved them too." The Empire was trapped in their own violent culture. They needed someone from outside to show them a different way. Danny looked up at the alien stars. "Do you think there are other species out there like us? Ones that could benefit from what we've learned?" "I hope so," Jake replied. "Because now we have an entire empire ready to help us find them." The translation error that had started their adventure was finally corrected, but the humans realized that sometimes the most important discoveries come from the mistakes we make along the way. They had set out to make first contact with an alien species, and instead they had helped transform an entire galactic civilization. As the 3 creatures they had saved in the arena played together in the gardens below their window, the humans knew that their real journey was just beginning. The galaxy was vast and full of species that might benefit from learning that there were alternatives to violence and conquest. The Empire had found its teachers, and humanity had found its purpose. Among the stars,